Hi, how's it going everyone? I hope you're all doing well. Today I'm gonna have a pretty short video, what I hope will be a short video. I'm only gonna be talking about 2 books today because that's all I finished in the month of February. I had an issue the whole month where I had like 5 books open and wasn't really getting into any of them. It's kind of creeping into March too, but I did start off March a little bit better. At the time that I'm filming, it's already mid-March. Anyway, so the first book that I read in February was Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. This is now my second book from him. I did read Warbreaker a few months ago, and I think I like that one a little bit more, but I still think Elantris was pretty good. I'm probably going to give it around a 4 stars out of 5. I believe this one is considered an adult high fantasy, even though it didn't really feel like that to me. I feel like the book focused a lot more on politics and religion more than actual fantasy and magic, because even though there's 3 magic systems mentioned in the book, Aendor, Glacian, and I can't remember the third one, and not all of them are elaborated on that much. And because this story centers around a time when the city of Elantris has sort of lost its splendor, and it's where magic came from. It's been 10 years in the beginning of the book that Elantris has sort of fallen. So we don't get to see the heyday, the golden age of these magic systems. Think of it a little bit like Star Wars in the original films when Luke Skywalker is the last Jedi. So we don't get to see Jedis in all their glory. Similar thing happening here. This book does kind of take off from the very first page before we really get to know the characters. It's pretty plot driven and there's not a whole lot of character development. They're pretty consistent throughout the whole book, maybe other than Rathan, who is sort of the antagonist, but not really. He's a morally gray character, so his arc is probably the most interesting. I just think that's always the case with these types of characters, because you don't know in what direction they're going to go, and the most likely to surprise you. But the 2 main characters, Raoden and Serene. Raoden is the prince of one city and Serene of another, and even though they've never met, they're engaged to be married. And they do have, it's mentioned that they had previously exchanged a lot of letters and they kind of got to know each other a little bit that way. So when the marriage was arranged, they were pretty hopeful that they were actually going to land in an arranged marriage and be able to fall in love with their spouse. When Serene arrives in Kai, which is the capital of Erelon, where Raoden is from, she's in for quite a surprise. Nothing is quite what it seems, and I'll go ahead and stop there, but you'll have to read it to find out more, of course. I did read this one as an audiobook, so it's a little bit hard to pick apart Brandon Sanderson's writing style in this book. Elantris was his first novel, but when I read Warbreaker, I found it pretty simplistic and a little repetitive in some of his descriptions. But because I read Elantris as an audiobook, I didn't pick up on those things quite as much, but I did notice him like doing the whole so-and-so raise their eyebrows a few times. But it didn't bother me as much as when I read Warbreaker as a physical book, because I felt like it just kept appearing over and over again. But as an audiobook, it didn't bother me too much. I think what I was trying to say last time is that I guess Brandon Sanderson's writing doesn't really have a hint of literary fiction in it, because there's fantasy that's written that way, but this is just very young adultish in writing style. If you do enjoy a lot of political intrigue and the religious regimes playing a big part in this, I think you'll enjoy this one. I don't think there was a moment while reading it that I was bored. It's really entertaining. I will say, however, I found the ending to be just a little underwhelming, again, because we don't get to see the magic systems really flourish. And if there is ever going to be a second book, I don't know at this point if there will or not. Maybe that information is out there somewhere. Let me know if you heard anything, because I can definitely see a sequel to this for sure. So yeah, I'm not in the biggest hurry to get into Sanderson's series anytime soon. I'll probably read the Mistborn series next from his line of books, but I'm not sure when exactly. Moving on, the next book that I read was Pet Sematary by Stephen King. I think a lot of people are starting to pick this one up since it's going to become a film next month, April 2019, right? I was pretty excited to read my first Stephen King novel. I don't know why. I was never particularly drawn to his novels. I'm drawn to movies that are based off of his books, but yeah. I also don't really read horror, so was a little surprised at myself for not only picking up a Stephen King book, but also a horror book. And quite honestly, this wasn't as terrifying as I thought it was going to be. I know it's kind of something that's thrown out there a lot, that this is his scariest book, and I think Stephen King has said this himself. So, I mean, I didn't really know anything about the story going into it, so I didn't know what to expect. It was more disturbing in some places rather than scary or horrific or nightmarish. I think this book does something interesting where it kind of goes back and forth between the horror elements and just plain old real life, that it kind of stops the suspense in moments. Or I shouldn't say moments, pretty long sections of the book. It's just, for example, Louis Creed, the main character, hanging out with his family. Or it's also a lot about him being a doctor and going to work. And he also has a lot of moments with his neighbor Judd. I love Judd, by the way. I think he was my favorite character, other than the cat, because who doesn't like cats? I came prepared. So yeah, on that note, I love the way the cat was handled in this book. It wasn't predictable at all. I can't say much more than that because spoilers. I would recommend everyone to just not watch the new movie trailer because it gives out so much freaking information. But I didn't dare watch it until after I was finished reading the book, just because I had a feeling it would have spoilers, and of course it did. And I already saw a lot of the changes that they're gonna make, and I'm not really happy with it. I don't think that the changes are gonna work for the film. I do, however, like that they chose John Lithgow to play Judd Crandall. I totally see it. And I'm not familiar with the actor who they chose for Louis Creed. His name is Jason Clarke, but he's kind of exactly the way that I imagined him, which is weird. And again, I'm just so obsessed with that cat. I love the way they portrayed it. I'm just gonna insert a picture here. That shot of that cat. It's just freaking fantastic. I love it. If you can't tell, I've mentioned it in a previous video, I love cats. I own 2 cats and I work at a zoo. If that doesn't tell you anything, yeah, I love animals. And quite honestly, that's the main reason why I chose to pick it up, because there's a cat on the cover. Anyway, I'm losing focus here. So the book teeter-totters in an interesting way between lighthearted moments and very disturbing ones. And it'll last a long time in both of them. So, you know, you get a lot of breaks. So I think if you have trouble with horror, and trust me, I have panic disorder, so you can imagine why I try and avoid it, but I was able to handle this pretty well, a lot more than I thought. But no, it's so grounded in real life that it's still relatable, it's tragic, probably more than terrifying. There's some really great dialogue and really human moments. Especially between Louis and Judd. That relationship also did not go the way that I thought, but I'm glad that it didn't. I'm still not sure how I feel about the ending. In the moment, I was, again, pretty underwhelmed. I was just kind of like, okay, I saw that coming. But in a way, I think I was trying to predict stuff, and in some of the more tragic things, I kind of predicted those things correctly. But I think I was trying really hard to prepare myself to not feel anything, because maybe I knew that I wouldn't handle it that well. I was intentionally trying not to feel. I didn't think about that before, but I think that's what it was. I don't think it's the book's fault. So I wanted to get that out there. So in this situation, I recognized that it was me putting up a wall. So just take my rating with a grain of salt, because I don't often read horror and I'm a bloody chicken. But I'm going to give it around a 4.25, which is really solid in my book. Now it's time for me to go and watch the 1989 version. A friend did tell me that it's a little outdated, but I'm still really curious, and a lot of people seem to say that it sticks more to the book, especially from what I saw of the new trailer. But yeah, that's going to be all for today. Let me know if you read either of these 2 books, Elantris or Pet Sematary, or just anything that you've recently read. I love to hear your guys' thoughts, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.